I'm Zach Martin. This is the Big Fat American Podcast with Mark Stein. Before we get started about the new song that you have out that was actually recorded a couple of years ago, but it fits the times we're living through right now, I want to tell you the story about the very first record album my mom ever gave me. I was about maybe 10. It was 1974. And my mom decided to get me my first album for my birthday. It was an LP. And, back then we didn't have a lot of money. So she saved up for it. And she hands me Vanilla Fudge. And she goes, "This is Vanilla Fudge. You think Led Zeppelin's so cool? Let me tell you something. Led Zeppelin opened up for Vanilla Fudge back in the day."
Yeah, man. At one point, Vanilla Fudge had 3 albums on the charts simultaneously in the late 60s. And this band called Led Zeppelin came to America. And Jimmy Page had broken up the Yardbirds, and they signed this new band called Led Zeppelin to Atlantic Records. We were label mates, and I was over at my manager's house, and they started playing a couple of these new tracks. I remember specifically, it was Dazed and Confused. I was like, man, I was just listening to this guy, Robert Plant, doing this really cool vocal, following the slide of Jimmy Page's guitar. It was just so cool sounding. Everybody was going, wow. So, well, these guys are going to open for you, so it was 1968.
From what I remember, a station out in Denver, KLZ, was involved in that. And you guys, you basically held out. You said, we're not going to play. Barry Fay, that was the guy's name.
Barry Fay, yeah.
Right. He was the concert promoter. And you guys said to him that you're not going to play unless they have Led Zeppelin open up for you guys in Denver. And then from what I understand, you were even willing to give Led Zeppelin some of the money that you would have made that night.
Well, that's the only way. Barry Fay said the only way that he would let them play is if we gave up some of our money to give it to them to pay for expenses or whatever it was. And that's basically what happened. It was Denver. I think it was December 26th in Denver in 1968. And then they went on to open for us in a whole, bunch of dates all over the Northwest. And in the beginning, they were just starting out, and they were a bunch of spastic kids, I'm telling you, man. I mean, Bonzo, John Bonham would knock on our door and say, "Oh, can I come in there? Can I meet you guys?" And yada, yada. And I said, "Yeah, come in, And Robert Plant and Page was playing through a small amp. He was playing a Telecaster. And Robert was like a little bit spastic the way he moved on stage. And we were talking because we were in our prime back then. We were like really hot, the Fudge, and they were watching the way we were performing, and they took a lot of this stuff from us, the confidence from a stage act. But
it does make sense what you're talking about, because the thing that Vanilla Fudge had in common with Led Zeppelin was you made your fame by covering other artists. Like You Keep Me Hanging On. Now, Led Zeppelin's first album, their debut album, were all covers of old blues songs. Let's move to present day. You're in Florida right now, and we're all under lockdown. And if COVID-19 and the stock market and the economy weren't bad enough, all of a sudden after what happened in Minnesota, we have racial unrest, and the topic of racism is front and center again. What's your take on the current situation regarding racism before we actually play your song?
I think what's happened is just the most incredible, perfect storm. That horrible thing that happened to George Floyd and his family was, witnessed by the world, seeing what happened. It's ridiculous. And, it just started a firestorm. It just brought up, just the bitterness and the hate, everything that was building up in society, over the years and decades, and it just blew up into what I think I call an incredible conflagration of humanity, for lack of a better word. Okay, and that's what's going on. It's just unstoppable. It's just amazing what's going on. Look what's happening. The peaceful protesters are now infiltrated by Antifa and rioters, and the violence, and the breaking the windows and looting and killing of other cops. And how can this be allowed to happen? How can the mayor of Seattle allow that town to completely be taken over, and there's no police? Mm-hmm. What happens? They want to defund the police. So great.
It's also a breakdown in critical thinking skills. It's people reacting instead of thinking of a proper response. It's people being a little bit too sensitive in many levels. You can't even joke with anybody anymore about anything without anybody getting upset.
You can't joke with anyone. Yeah. God forbid you say anything if you're on the left or the right. I'm a registered independent, okay? That means I can sit on the fence and I can look to my left. I can look to my right. Yeah. I can make a judgment about what I feel about the Democrats, the Republicans, And I guess what I've been saying is just amazing. You can't say anything about either side without it blowing up.
Yeah, the idea of using rational thought or thinking on your own is just beyond capacity for most people these days. Not the people that are listening right now, obviously, that not everybody's the same. And that brings us to this. With a lack of love, we have a lot of problems. And when you have hate in your heart towards anybody, whether it's the President of the United States, the Speaker of the House, the Senate Majority Leader, or the Senate Minority Leader, the governor, the mayor, whatever it might be, when you start saying hateful words towards those people that we just talked about, it says a lot about the hate that is probably infecting your own system, and it clouds your thinking. So you don't have to love everything that everybody does, and you can certainly hate their actions. But when I see people wishing harm upon the President of the United States or another politician go burn down the White House, I really have a problem with that, regardless who the occupant of the White House is. I served in the United States Army, Mark, and I took an oath to defend this country against all enemies, foreign and domestic. It didn't say that right? Well, you're welcome. And it didn't say, well, I didn't really do much, but I was willing. I never was asked, like, do you swear this oath contingent upon there's an R or D after the president's title, after the name? No, that's not what any of this is about. So I try to stay out of that as much as possible. I supported Obama once he was elected as our president. I respected the man. Mm-hmm. I didn't always agree with him. I respect our current president, President Trump. I actually, in many ways, feel sorry for him. I know sometimes he's a victim of his own circumstances, but you and I are from the same area, and a 70-year-old man from New York or New Jersey uses curse words a lot, has nicknames for everybody. We grew up with giving each other nicknames, and it's just how they are. They're just direct. So you get what you pay for, and what you see is what you get for the most part. But let's move on to the whole racism issue. A couple years ago, you had this song, Racism. What was the reaction when you first played that song for your friends? And then we'll talk about the reaction you're getting now.
Okay, yeah, I did. I recorded it probably about 2.5 years ago, and it was influenced by the Ferguson, Missouri debacle that happened. And, I was feeling real sensitive to what was going on. And I was actually watching a news show with my wife in the morning, and I saw, I said, look at this. It's this, 5-year-old toddler, a black kid and a white kid holding hands going to school. And they're hugging each other, and they're laughing, and they're kissing each other. And I said, look at the love that they show for one another. And before you know it, there's a good chance that it's going to develop into a negative situation when racism, which is systemic in our society, takes hold of this thing. So I just had this. I was inspired to go and write this song, and the song actually starts off like that. I would see a black child walking with a white child on their way to school, smiling at each other like a sister and a brother, laughing at the grown-up fools because they're way too young. Their life has just begun. To follow the golden rule of hating one another because their skins are different colors, growing up in a world so cruel. And their mamas and daddies, they could never get along throughout history. The venom is so strong. Shame on humanity for letting it get away from 200 years ago to this day. And it goes on. You'll play the song. Going to give the whole thing away, but the whole story just kind of came that way, developed that way. So 2 years ago, everybody was afraid of it. They said, you're crazy. You're going to be called a racist. Nobody wants to hear about this, producers, my bandmates. And I got so much resistance from everybody, even though I was excited about the production and the track, I just put it on a back burner. And fast forward to today's situation, I said, you know what? This could be like the soundtrack to what's going on today. And I started putting it out on social media. I started sending it out. I sent it out to some top producer people that I know. And they said, wow, this is a hell of a song. This is really an important song right now. And everybody on social media was giving me nothing but very powerful, positive feedback. This is a great track, yada, yada. It was really cool. And I started getting calls. I started doing radio interviews. Here I am doing one with you. It's going well, and it's only been out a little over a week now, and it's getting great reaction.
It's available on iTunes, I take it?
Yeah, it's on YouTube, and it's on Spotify. And I'm looking forward to, hopefully, I can't say what label it is, but I think it's going to be put out as a single, an A and B side.
That's not a bad idea, because a lot of artists these days, instead of releasing LPs, they're releasing 45s. It's back to the way it was in the old days. So Mark Stein, thank you very much for spending some time with us and talking about this new song. We're going to play it right now. It's Racism